The suitcase slipped from her hand and hit the ground, not because it was heavy, but because the woman standing inside the house was wearing her life, her dress, her slippers, even her smile. "Excuse me." Her voice came out slower than she expected, like her body was trying to understand before her mind did. "What are you doing in my house?" The woman froze for half a second, then recovered too quickly. That was the first red flag. Kemi, right?" she said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Kemi didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe, because that voice, that face, it wasn't just some stranger. It was Amara, her best friend, the one she trusted with everything, the one who knew every detail of this house, because Kemi had shown her every blueprint, every tile, every curtain, over video calls from thousands of miles away. Kemi swallowed. "Why are you here?" Amara opened her mouth, closed it, then stepped aside. "Come in," she said quietly. That was the second red flag, because Amara didn't sound like a guest. She sounded like someone who belonged there. Kemi stepped in slowly. Her chest tightened immediately. Something was wrong. The scent of the house had changed. It didn't smell like her anymore. The couch was in a different position. The paintings she chose were gone. Even the rug. "No," she whispered under her breath, shaking her head slightly as her eyes moved across the room. Her heels clicked against the floor, each step heavier than the last. "Where are my things?" Amara didn't answer. That silence said everything. Kemi turned sharply. "Amara, where are my things?" Before Amara could respond, the bedroom door opened, and everything inside Kemi shifted. A man stepped out, adjusting his sleeve like he had just woken up from a normal afternoon. Like nothing was wrong. Like this was his home. "Who's—" He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes locked onto Kemi, and for the first time, he looked uneasy. "Kemi." Her name came out like a mistake, like something he didn't expect to say today. Kemi stared at him, long, hard, trying to recognize the man standing in front of her, because he looked like Tunde, her husband, but something about him felt different, distant, unfamiliar. "You changed the locks," she said quietly, not a question, a statement. Tunde exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Kemi, I didn't know you were coming back today." She let out a short, empty laugh. "Of course you didn't." Silence, heavy, uncomfortable. Kemi's eyes moved between the two of them, back and forth, connecting dots she never wanted to connect. "You've been living here," she said, her voice steadier now. "Both of you." Amara looked down. Tunde didn't respond. That was the answer. Kemi nodded slowly. "Okay," she whispered, then louder. "How long?" Tunde hesitated. That hesitation told her everything. "How long?" she repeated, this time sharper. 2 years. The words didn't hit immediately. They hovered, hung in the air, like her brain refused to process them. 2 years, she echoed. Amara finally spoke, her voice small. "Kemi, it's not what you think." Kemi snapped. "Then what is it?" Her voice cracked, louder than she intended, echoing across the room. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like what I think." Her chest rose and fell rapidly now, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. "I was gone for 3 years, she said, her voice dropping again, quieter but sharper. "You said 1 year after I left?" Tunde looked away. That was confirmation. Kemi let out another short laugh. This time, there was no humor in it. "So you waited a year?" She nodded slowly. "Just long enough to feel less guilty, right?" "That's not fair," Tunde said, his voice rising suddenly. Kemi froze. That tone, that shift. "Not fair?" she repeated. "Yes," he stepped forward slightly. "You left, Kemi. You chose to go abroad. You chose your career over this marriage." Her eyes widened. "What?" "You weren't here," he continued. "You left me alone in this house for years. Do you know what that does to someone?" Kemi stared at him like she had never seen him before, because she hadn't, not this version of him. "I left to build this house," she said slowly, pointing around. "I left to send money, every month, every week, every shift I worked. And I appreciated that," he cut in quickly. "But money isn't everything, Kemi." Silence. Then, A faint, controlled smile formed on her lips. Say that again. Tunde hesitated. Say it. She stepped closer now. Say money isn't everything. In a house I paid for. Amara shifted uncomfortably. Kemi, please, don't. Kemi raised a hand without looking at her. Just don't. Her eyes were locked on Tunde. Sharp. Focused. You think I abandoned you? She asked quietly. You did, he said more softly now. You weren't here. Kemi nodded slowly. Right. Another pause. Then she took a step back, and something inside her changed. The anger didn't disappear.
It settled, focused, controlled. Okay, she said calmly. Let's talk about that. Tunde frowned slightly. What do you mean? She tilted her head slightly, her voice almost too calm now. If I abandon this marriage, then explain something to me. She walked toward the dining table, dropped her handbag, unzipped it, and pulled out a thick file. The sound alone made both of them stiffen. What are you doing? Amara asked nervously. Kemi didn't answer. She flipped the file open slowly, deliberately. Because I remember something very clearly, she continued, her eyes scanning the papers. Every transfer, every receipt, every agreement we signed before I left. Tunde's expression shifted. Just slightly. But enough. And I remember, she added, pulling out a document and placing it on the table, making sure that everything I built was protected. Silence. Heavy. What is that? Tunde asked cautiously. Kemi looked up, and for the first time since she walked in, she wasn't hurt, she wasn't confused, she wasn't overwhelmed, she was in control. That, she said slowly, tapping the paper with her finger, is where your problem starts. She leaned slightly closer, her voice dropping. You thought I left everything behind. A pause. Then, you didn't realize I secured everything before I left. Silence. And just like that, the balance of power shifted. Kemi let the silence sit there long enough to make both of them uncomfortable. Tunde was the first to move. He stepped toward the table, reached for the document, then stopped when Kemi placed her palm over it. No, she said. You don't touch anything until I'm done speaking. His jaw tightened. Kemi, this doesn't need to become a scene. She almost laughed. Become? She asked. Tunde, I walked into my own house and found my husband standing beside my best friend. Like this is some normal Sunday afternoon. What exactly do you think this is? Amara folded her arms across herself, suddenly smaller than before. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Kemi turned to her slowly. Really? Then how is it supposed to happen? I send money for the kitchen tiles, and you send me photos of yourself using them. I pay for a bed, and you sleep in it? Was that the softer version? Amara looked away. That answer was enough. Kemi opened the file and pulled out a stack of papers, receipts clipped together, scanned signatures, transaction printouts from another country, and one sealed envelope she had not touched in months. Tunde saw the envelope, and his expression shifted. She noticed. Of course, she noticed. That look, she said quietly. That's the first honest thing I've seen from you today. He tried to recover. You're being dramatic. No, Kemi replied. I was dramatic the day I cried in a hospital changing room because my feet were swollen, and I still had another 9-hour shift to finish. I was dramatic when I called you at 2 a.m., my time, and smiled through exhaustion because you said the workers needed more money. This, she tapped the documents. This is administration. Amara swallowed hard. Tunde pulled out a chair and sat down like he was trying to regain control by appearing relaxed. Fine. Explain. Kemi nodded. Gladly. She pulled one sheet free and placed it between them. Every month for 3 years, I transferred money into the building account. Not 1 month missed. Some months, twice. The roofing, the gate, the plumbing, the generator, the furniture, the interior finishing. Want me to continue? Tunde's voice came low. I know what you paid. Do you? She shot back. Because you've been behaving like someone who has no claim, but acts like they do. Amara closed her eyes briefly. Kemi, she whispered, please. That word again, please. As if the damage could still be softened, as if betrayal had a gentler pronunciation. Kemi looked at her friend. No, at the woman she used to call her friend. And for a second, something old flashed in her chest. A memory, the kind that hurt because it had once been warm. Amara on a rainy evening years ago, barefoot on Kemi's tiny apartment floor, eating fried plantain from the same plate and laughing with her over men they swore they'd never trust. Amara braiding Kemi's hair before her wedding. Amara crying first when Kemi got the overseas nursing contract, hugging her tight and saying, "Go, build your life. I'll look after things here." That memory hit so hard, Kemi almost resented herself for still holding on to it. She blinked once, and the present came back sharp. "Don't use that tone with me," she said. "You lost the right to say please the day you moved your suitcase into my bedroom." Amara's lips trembled. "I didn't plan this." Kemi's stare didn't move. "And yet you packed for it." Tunde stood again, this time more forcefully. "Enough. You've said what you came to say. You can't just fly in here and start acting like..." "Like what?" Kemi cut in. "Like the owner?" He fell silent. That was when she pulled the sealed envelope out. The room shifted again. Even the air felt different. Tunde stared at it like he recognized what it represented. Kemi opened it carefully and slid out a notarized copy of the international agreement they had signed before she left. The paper was slightly worn at the edges, but the stamp was still clear. "I remember this day perfectly," she said, though she was really speaking to herself now. "You were the one who insisted we do things properly." Tunde's eyes flickered. A flashback rose in her mind with painful clarity. A small legal office near the marina, air conditioning too cold, the lawyer speaking too fast, Tunde impatient, but smiling because he was still pretending to be the version of himself she had married. He had held her hand across the desk and said, "You're going far from me. The least I can do is make sure everything you're sending back is protected. I don't ever want money to become an issue between us." She had looked at him then with so much love, it embarrassed her now. Back in the room, she placed the paper flat. "You signed this," she said. Tunde's voice was dry. "That doesn't mean what you think it means?" Kemi gave him a long look. "You have always had one terrible habit." He said nothing. "You mislead best when you think the other person is emotional," she continued. "That's why you're confused now. You thought I would come in here screaming, crying, begging, maybe even fighting for you." She leaned closer. "I'm not here for you." That landed. Amara frowned. "Then why are you here?" Kemi turned to her. "For what is mine?" No one spoke for several seconds. Then Tunde let out a quiet, dismissive laugh. It didn't help him. "You think this paper changes everything?" he asked. "This is Nigeria, Kemi, not wherever you've been living. We'll see how far your foreign documents take you." Kemi's face didn't change. That made him uneasy. "We already have," she said quietly. Tunde stopped laughing. Amara looked from one to the other. "What does that mean?" Kemi reached into her bag again, and this time pulled out her phone. "I landed this morning," she said. "By noon, I had copies of every document revalidated by a local firm. By 1:30, I had a temporary restraining order draft ready if I decided to file. By 2, I had confirmation that the property cannot be legally transferred, refinanced, rented, or used as collateral without my authorization." Amara took a step back. Tunde's face drained slowly. Kemi kept going. "And by 3, she said, looking directly at him now, I had someone start reviewing the signatures on those papers you tried to use to change ownership." For the first time, Tunde looked genuinely unsettled. Amara turned to him instantly. "What papers?" He didn't answer. Amara's voice rose. "Tunde, what papers?" Kemi watched it happen and felt something cold settle into place inside her. This was the real him, not just disloyal, not just weak, but calculated. He hadn't just replaced her, he had planned around her. "There are forged signatures," Kemi said. "Mine." Amara stared at him. "You told me everything was already settled." Tunde snapped. "Stay out of this." She stepped forward. "Stay out of..." "I'm in it, Tunde. I moved into this house because you said she wasn't coming back and everything was legally handled." Kemi's eyes sharpened. There it was. Not just betrayal. Planning. Preparation. A narrative built in advance. Tunde rubbed his forehead. "Both of you need to calm down." That almost made Kemi smile. 3 years, she said quietly. 3 years I was carrying this marriage on my back. I missed birthdays, funerals, holidays. I worked nights until my hands shook. I learned how to sleep in fragments. I watched my body break down in a country that never really felt like home because I thought the sacrifice made sense if it was building something real. Her voice thinned for the first time. "But all this time," She looked around the room. I was financing my own replacement. No one answered. Even Tunde had the awareness to look away. The silence that followed was heavy, not peaceful, not healing, just heavy. Kemi inhaled deeply and steadied herself. Here's what happens next, she said. Tunde looked up. You don't get to decide that alone. I already have. He moved toward her. Kemi, she stepped back and held up her phone. Another step, she said, and I make one call. He stopped. Her voice stayed level. You will not intimidate me in a house you tried to take control of. Amara's breathing was uneven now. Tunde, tell me she's lying. He didn't. That silence answered her too. Amara let out a short, disbelieving laugh. Wow. Then she looked at Kemi, and for the first time all day, there was no defensiveness in her face, only shock. I swear to you, I didn't know about forged documents. Kemi believed that part. And somehow, that made everything even worse, because it meant Amara had thrown away her loyalty, her dignity, and her future, for a man who had been using both of them differently. Tunde looked cornered now. This is getting out of hand. Kemi nodded. Yes, for you. He pointed at the papers. Even if everything you're saying is true, you still left. You still disappeared into work, and calls, and money. You stopped being a wife long before any of this happened. That one struck closer than the others, because pain always listens for the version of the lie that sounds almost true. Kemi felt it, the sting. The temptation to defend, explain, confess exhaustion, explain loneliness, explain the pressure, explain the distance, explain all the nights she had cried and still called him smiling because she didn't want to sound like a burden. But she didn't. Instead, she asked one question. When did you stop waiting for me? Tunde opened his mouth. Nothing came out. She took a step toward him. No, answer me. Not when did you get involved with her. Not when did you move her in. When did you decide I had become useful to you, but no longer human to you? He looked at her, and in that 1 second she saw the truth. Not guilt, not regret, convenience. And that hurt more than the affair, because betrayal could still hide behind weakness. This was colder. This was strategy. Kemi nodded slowly, as if he had spoken out loud. Right, she whispered. Then she picked up her file, gathered the papers, and slipped the agreement back into the envelope. This conversation is over for today, she said. Tunde frowned. You can't just walk in, threaten us, and leave. Kemi looked at him with quiet disbelief. Threaten? Then she gave a small, humorless smile. Tunde. I haven't even started. And before either of them could respond, her phone vibrated in her hand. She looked down. Unknown number. One new message. He's not telling the full truth. I have proof. Don't let them know. I contacted you. Kemi's eyes narrowed. Then she looked up slowly, because suddenly the situation inside the house was no longer the only story, and the next move would decide how everything unfolded. Kemi didn't react immediately. That was the first thing she controlled. Her face stayed neutral, her breathing steady. Her eyes didn't flicker, but inside, something shifted again, because now this wasn't just betrayal. This was layered, calculated, observed. She slipped the phone face down into her bag. Not a word, not a hint. Tunde was still watching her, trying to read something he no longer understood. What is it? He asked. Kemi picked up her suitcase. Nothing you need to worry about, she said. And that sentence, that calm, controlled sentence, did something to him, because for the first time he realized he wasn't the one controlling this anymore. Amara stepped forward slightly. Kemi, where are you going? Kemi paused at the door.